How's it going, everyone? I hope you're having a good day because today we have one of the craziest Karen stories ever. So sit back, relax, maybe grab something to eat, grab something to drink, subscribe if you're new. We're going to call today's subscriber who submitted this story, we're going to call him Zach. So anyways, right, Zach and his mom move into a new neighborhood. And, Zach is, I don't know, he's in high school, so he's kind of an older kid. Zach isn't an adult yet, but he's kind of getting up there, right? And so anyways, right, Zach and his mom, they move into this new neighborhood and, they drive in and they're like unpacking their bags and they're getting in there. And believe it or not, their neighbors are not Karens. Their neighbors are actually really cool people, and their neighbors walk over and they say, hey, like, we're going to help you move in. Not even like, do you need help moving in? They're like, hey, we know what it's like. We're going to help you move in. So they helped them move all the boxes, and they said, hey, come over for dinner tonight. So Zach and his mom were actually really excited because they had really cool neighbors. And so sure enough, right, dinner time came around and they walked over to the neighbor's house, and the neighbor was kind of just telling them all about the neighborhood. And Zach's mom was like, hey, is there anything we should know about the neighborhood? Because I don't know, maybe there's a really cool restaurant that no one really knows about, but is really good and it's kind of underground. Maybe there's really cool, maybe there's a really good park. I don't know if they had kids or something. Maybe there's kind of a sketchy part you want to stay away from. I don't know. There's maybe some things about the town that you just wouldn't know from a quick Google search. And the neighbor kind of looked at them and said, well, there's actually this woman. You might see her walking around and just don't make eye contact. Just kind of let her go about her business. And kind of Zach and his mom look at each other kind of a little bit what's going on here? I don't like this. This is a little weird. And then the neighbor's like, you know what? Don't even, you know what? That's nothing. It's nothing. Forget I said anything. Dude, whenever someone says, forget I said anything, that is the most ridiculous statement ever, because they say something really interesting. They're like, oh, forget I said anything. Dude, I will not be able to forget that you said something of interest. Come on now. So anyways, they continue on having dinner, and it's a great rest of the dinner. And Zach and his mom are walking back over when it's to their house when it's done. And Zach says, that was really cool, but didn't you think that was weird when that guy started to talk about this woman that walks around the neighborhood and how we shouldn't make eye contact? And then kind of midway through his sentence, he said, you know what? Forget I said anything. That was weird, right? And Zach's mom was like, yeah, man, that's kind of strange. I'm not going to lie, but whatever. If it's really an issue, he probably would have said something. He's pretty cool. So anyways, days go on, probably about a week or so, and Zach is about to get into his car. So Zach has his keys. He's walking outside and he's looking at his car. He's about to put his keys into his car when he sees in the reflection of the car, right? There's a kind of a figure moving in the background. So Zach turns around, and sure enough, across the street, he sees this woman walking. And it's this kind of older woman, and she's kind of waddling along, and she has these big aviator sunglasses on. And that's when she stops walking. And she turns and she looks directly at him. And Zach is a little bit freaked out. He's not going to lie. He's a little bit freaked out at this moment. So he quickly turns back around to put his keys into the car and be I'm not going to start anything. And that's when he notices in the reflection of the car that the little kind of blob in the background is starting to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So he turns around and he looks, and sure enough, right, Karen is crossing the street. But she's not crossing the street just to cross the street. She was very intently coming right at him. She wasn't crossing over, or wasn't going to the house next to him or before him. She was coming right at him. So Zach at this point knew that he probably couldn't get away with just putting his keys in the car and, running in, because she was closing in fast. Even though she was a bit of a shuffler and didn't move that quickly, I guess when the Karen wanted to strike, the Karen was going to strike. So sure enough, the Karen walks up to his lawn. And, Zach kind of turns away from his car and looks at her and says, hello there, Obi-Wan Kenobi. No, I'm just kidding. She's like, hey, what's up? And the Karen is like, you don't live here. And Zach is like, well, no, my mom and I just moved in a couple weeks ago. She's like, nope. I know the owners of this house. They're trying to find someone to buy it, and you are squatting in here. If you don't know, squatting is basically when a house is in limbo, no one's living in it, but someone will probably live in it at some point. people will kind of just break in and just live in the house without paying any rent or anything like that, or just without owning the house, just because, like, I mean, no one's living in there, and it is technically a crime. So sure enough, the Karen was accusing them of that. And Zach at this point was like, ma'am, no, this is my house, or this is my mom's house, and I'm living with her. Like, we're just not squatting. That's just not a thing. And she's like, no, I know the landlord, and I do not remember her telling me that she sold the house. So you must be squatting. You better get out of here. I'm giving you a countdown of 1 day for you and your little squatter buddies to get out of my neighborhood. And Zach is like, well, ma'am, I'm not going to get out of your neighborhood nor this house because I live here, and my mom and I purchased this legally. And the Karen's like, nice try. Just know that I will get the authorities involved if you're not gone within 1 day. And Zach is like, okay, sure, do it. Real quick, comment Karen down below if you made it this far into the video. And if you want to support the channel, just sit down and binge watch a bunch of videos. It really does help me out. And let me know in the comment section what you're doing while you're watching my videos, like playing video games, going to sleep, whatever it is. I'm going to be pretty active today in the comments, so I'll try and heart and just say thank you. I appreciate you guys watching me and just always, I really do. And I wish I could say it. I'm going to get back to the story. I don't want to drag this on, but I just want to say thank you. Like, genuinely, I'm very grateful. Anyways, let's get back to it. So sure enough, Zach is like, okay. And the Karen turns around and walks over to the other side and is like pouting the entire time. Like, it's very weird and surreal. So when Zach's mom gets back from work, Zach is like, yo. And his mom's like, what? And Zach's like, dude, so you know, like how we were over at that house? And, you know, his mom's like, yeah, like we're just over there a couple weeks ago. You know how they're talking about that lady that we shouldn't make eye contact with? And Zach's mom's like, yes. And Zach's like, dude, it was crazy. I was just looking at my car and I saw something in the reflection. And then a lady just came over and she accused me of squatting. And his mom's like, dude, what? And Zach's like, yeah, she said I had 1 day to get out or she's getting the authorities involved. And Zach's mom's like, well, we're not going anywhere because we legally purchased this house. Like, that's ridiculous. And Zach's like, dude, that's what I was saying, but she didn't take no for an answer. So sure enough, right, you know, a day goes by, and the next day, Zach is at home, and it's a Saturday, so his mom is also at home. And that's when they get a knock on the door. And, you know, Zach's mom approaches, and Zach is like in the other room, so he actually comes over just to see. And when Zach is coming around the corner, he sees his mom talking to two police officers. Basically, the police officers say, hey, we got a route, we got a call that like you guys were squatting here. We don't necessarily believe it, but we have to come, like we're forced to come here. Is there any way, like, look, ma'am, it looks like you're living here. We can just go about our day. And Zach's mom's like, no. Actually, I just want to get this on the record so that she can't pull anything later on. I have the deed to my house on the phone. I think you can have a deed on your phone. She had some kind of verification / proof on her phone. Zach's mom pulls out her phone, shows both the officers. The officer's like, ma'am, so sorry about this. Like, we had to come. The lady who called you in has always been kind of trouble in the neighborhood, but we can't rule out everything she said so far because she once actually got someone. So it's, we're sorry, ma'am. Like, have a nice day. We won't ever see you again for something like this. And sure enough, right, Zach and his mom were like, oh, okay, great. This is great news. We're done. Oh, no. No. Incorrect. False. That is a false narrative. That is fake news. They were not done. In fact, that was only step one of Karen's evil plan. The Karen's evil plan only got more evil after this point. So sure enough, right, the next day comes around and Zach is back outside in his car. And once again, he's walking out to his car, and that's when he he catches something in the corner of his eye. At the end of his driveway, the Karen is standing there with her hands on her hips, and the black aviator sunglasses, once again, were piercing into his soul. So he turns around and looks at her, and they basically have a staring contest for what's probably like 5 seconds. But in Zach, it just felt like to Zach like minutes, like hours, like days, millenniums, like infinite universes amounts of time. Like, it was just so long. So Zach eventually is like, can I help you? And the Karen says, so you tricked the authorities. And Zach's like, come again? And she's like, I know you're squatting. I know that you're a big squatter and you don't actually own the rights to be here. But somehow you fooled the incompetent authorities. The police department over here are idiots, I'm telling you. And Zach's like, ma'am, come on. You called the police on us, which was ridiculous, and we showed them proof that we own the house. What more do you want? And she's like, I want to be satisfied, and I'm not satisfied until you guys are gone for squatting. And Zach's like, ma'am, do you think maybe it is a possibility that we are in fact not squatting? And she's like, no. So Zach tries to reason with the Karen, but the Karen is basically saying, I believe that you're squatting and I'm going to prove it one way or another. So anyways, Zach finds this kind of weird, a little bit ominous, but I don't know. It's some senile old woman. Like, honestly, what could she really do? What could she do? Anyways, so sure enough, right, the next day, or not the next day, right, it's getting close to bedtime. Zach and his mom, they're watching some TV show, and eventually it's getting late, and they're both like, all right, let's go to bed. So, Zach goes into his room. He's on his phone, and he's watching a video. And he hears kind of like this weird banging noise. And he's thinking, okay, did that come from my video that I was just watching, or is that actually something? And then once again, this weird banging noise. And he's like, that can't be, that has to be downstairs. So Zach gets up, and that's when he starts hearing like these footstep noises. He's like, oh my God, is someone in my house? And at first he's like, okay, maybe my mom is making like a racket down there. So he starts to walk over to his mom's room because it's a 2-story house, and they both have rooms on the second floor, and the noises were coming from the first floor. So he walks over, and he opens his mom's room. She's fast asleep. This is when Zach's heart starts to race a little bit, because he knows that those are sounds of people or some person in his house, and he was kind of thinking it was his mom until he went and saw that, in fact, it was not his mom. His mom was sound asleep. So now he's really scared. So he wakes up his mom. He's like, Mom. She's like, what? He's like, shh, quiet. His mom's like, Zach, what is going on? And Zach's like, listen. And at this point, Zach's mom's like, what? And Zach's like, Mom, I think someone's downstairs. And Zach's mom starts to come to it a little bit and is like, oh my God, hand me my phone. So they grab the phone. Zach's mom dials 911. She's like, no, this might be an emergency. I think someone's in our house. I don't know if they're armed. I don't know if they're I don't know if they're lost or somehow gone to our house. I don't know, but someone's in our house. And they're like, all right, we'll be there and whatever. So sure enough, right, Zach and his mom are like, what do we do? And Zach's like, I want to go see who it is. And Zach's mom's like, no, that's ridiculous. Barricade the door. So sure enough, Zach and his mom close their door and start moving furniture, right? And it's a pretty well barricaded door. And all they do now is kind of like Zach and his mom are kind of looking at the door, then they're looking outside their window to check when the cops are going to call, then they're looking at the door, and then they're looking outside the window again. And eventually, right, they see kind of like this blue flashing light, so they're like, okay, finally, great, the cops are finally here. And so sure enough, cops come, and they open, and they're like, open up, please. Eventually, they break through the door, and then they hear this commotion happening downstairs, like this kind of like woman kind of yelling or whatever. The cops being like, freeze, whatever, right? A lot of commotion, a lot of yelling, and Zach's like, that sounds like an old woman. And Zach's mom's like, quiet, Zach, let the men do what they're supposed to do. Zach's like, okay, Mom. She's like, anyways, right? So eventually, they stopped hearing as much commotion. They hear steps coming up the stairs, like bum, 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 bum. And sure enough, right, then they hear a knock on the door. And they're like, all right, ma'am, it's us. We have whoever's in your house. You can come out now. And Zach's mom, 1 second, I want to check through the peephole. And the police officer's like, that's totally fine. So Zach's mom goes up to the keyhole, puts her eye in it, and kind of looks through, and sure enough, it is the police officer. So then Zach and Zach's mom start moving the furniture and blockade until they can eventually get out of the door. So they open it, and Zach's mom's like, officer, like, I don't know what happened. Is everything okay? And the officer's like, yep, everything's fine. Like, you can come down with us now. Like, it's totally safe or whatever. And so sure enough, they walk down the stairs, and the other officer has this older woman in handcuffs. And Zach is like, oh my God. And he pulls his mom aside. He said, this is the Karen. This is the Karen I was telling you about. The one who said that, like, you know, we're squatting and that the police are idiots and that she's going to prove it one way or another. And Zach's mom's like, oh my God. So sure enough, they get down there. And the Karen is screaming like, these people are squatting here. They don't own this house. They're a danger to the neighborhood. You guys are just too incompetent and foolish to understand. The police officer's like, ma'am, quiet down, please. And so eventually Zach kind of like speaks up and he says, hey, I know this woman. And they're like, yeah, we know this woman too. And he's like, no, like this woman, you know, she's accused of squatting and sent you guys here. It was the same police officers. And they say, yep, we remember. And Zach's like, and then she said later on that you guys like were idiots and didn't understand that she was going to prove it herself. So I guess this is her proving it herself. And the two police officers like look at each other and then look at the old woman. And the Karen is like, officers, this is a perfect time for you to arrest them immediately for squatting. Officers, you don't understand. This is the perfect time for you to arrest them. Officers, arrest them immediately. What are you doing? Why are they still standing there? Arrest these hooligans who are squatting in the neighborhood. And they're like, ma'am, we saw their like documents. They're legit. And the woman's like, no, my friend is the realtor around here. She would have told me. And the officers were like, ma'am, what do you think the odds are that either they're really squatting and they were able to fake documents on a whim and show it to us and have completely moved in and faked bank documents and got a fake loan, or your friend, the realtor, doesn't update you with her life every 5 seconds. This house was sold kind of recently. When's the last time you talked to her? And the Karen's like, well, it's been about 2 years, but she totally would have told me. At this point, Zach is like, bruh, wait, what? This whole suspicion was because your friend who owns this house, you know, was going to tell you, and you haven't talked to her in 2 years? And the Karen's like, well, 1.5. No, not even 2, like 1.5. We're still really close. Zach is like, oh my God, dude. So the police are like, all right, what do we want to do here? Zach's mom stands up, looks at the Karen and says, look, we are not squatting and I'm not going to press charges, but if you ever even step foot on this house again, you know, charges will be pressed. Because what you can do is like, you don't have to press charges, but within the statute of limitations, you can always press those charges again. Like, you can, like, bring up the case again, I think. And that's basically, and the police officers are like, yeah, like, ma'am, don't come back around here. We won't have any problems. And she's like, fine, whatever. Because I think eventually Karen got it through kind of her very incredibly dense skull that maybe her friend just didn't tell her and that these people are not squatting. So, yeah, eventually Zach and Zach's mom, they go back in and they try to go back to bed, but it's pretty hard. And a couple weeks later, you know, they're invited back over to their neighbors, or actually they invite their neighbors. That's what it was. They